It is the battle for the Heroes Trophy, and we're not sure who the heroes on the field will be.
You are Locked On Huskers, your daily podcast on the Nebraska Cornhuskers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Your Huskers every day. That's what we're talking about. I'm DP for Locked On Huskers. Thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. Greatly appreciate you spending time with me to prepare for beat Iowa. And there's no look, if you're wearing the black and gold today and you just came to be nosy and poke yourself in and find out what Husker Nation is talking about, welcome. Before we get into this, all the details of this thing, and I want to talk a little offense today, and I said a little offense on purpose. Before we get into the show and all the details of it, Rico, super producer, kind sir, let them know about LinkedIn.
Thanks, DP. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Does your small business have positions available? LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the best qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Back to you, DP.
Thank you, sir. And again, I appreciate you hanging out with me for this episode. Again, for those of you that have subscribed, thank you. For those of you who haven't, I will pause. Please click the button, go down, and get the subscription. That way, and it shows those Iowa fans that Locked On Huskers has more of a fan base than Locked On Hawkeyes. There's the challenge if you're up for it. Lots to talk about in this episode as we prepare for it. Again, a short week. As we try to get into the nuts and bolts of what this game should be. Now, remember that the Heroes Trophy belongs to Lincoln, Nebraska currently, and it'll go up again. It is open for discussion on Friday. The matter will be settled on the field Friday at 11 o'clock. The fan bases know each other. It's a backyard brawl. It's a border war. It's all the things. It's the real rivalry game. It's the protected rivalry of the two teams involved. Shared space. Again, Iowa has bad corn. We understand that. We'll deal with that. But the thing about this football, and the last time these two teams met, Nebraska did a thing that hadn't been done in a while, and that is to figure out a way to beat Iowa. And while that is wonderful and gives all the warm and fuzzies, the reality is that this is a rivalry that Iowa's playing for the Big Ten West Championship and a berth and a date to Indianapolis for the Big Ten Championship against whoever wins between Michigan and Ohio State. I'm not sure anybody gives Iowa the full credit. Look, this is a 9-2 team, 6-2 in the Big Ten Conference. And for whatever way they got to 9-2, Nebraska fans would trade a lot in corn. They would trade a lot in corn for the rights to say that they were 9-2 and 6-2 in the Big Ten Conference, sitting on top of the Big Ten West, playing for a Big Ten West championship and a berth to the conference championship. They would trade a lot. Overall, the series has value, but again, you're 53 games in. Nebraska's won 30, Iowa's won 20, and 3 ties. At Lincoln, at Memorial Stadium, Nebraska leads at 15-7-1. But the numbers that matter is that Nebraska is trying to find a way. Listen, the mission is to go 1-0, and who you're playing is really irrelevant in the sense that you need to focus on that single focus of doing your job. And doing your job allows you to disregard who you're doing it against. But we're humans, and the human part of it is that when those in the scarlet and cream put their hand and fingers into Memorial Stadium's turf, that the turf at Tom Osborne Field has a different meaning and a different vibe when the opponent is the Iowa Hawkeyes. And they're playing for something. They're playing for something. And if you're Nebraska, you're playing not only for bragging rights and not only to feel good about yourself and not only to simply understand that task-oriented teams figure out how to win a game. That the rivalry only adds to it, but it can't add too much because that's just distraction, according to some. Nebraska has the opportunity, and the number that matters most is them trying to figure out how to get win number 6. Win number 6 changes everything. A win over Iowa changes everything. A bowl game berth changes everything. Literally, all of the discussions that we're going to have over the course of the next, 9 months will be based on whether this Nebraska football team figured out how to beat Iowa. Beat Iowa. It provided some peace and calm a year ago in Nebraska figuring out how to win. And again, they went to Iowa City and got the win. Like if you can go to Iowa and get the win and take the capital and take the trophy, you've done a great thing. But this one holds a little more sauce than previous. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. One game at a time is the real thing. Nebraska wins it 24-17 a year ago with Casey Thompson and Trey Palmer and that defense that stood up and held Iowa to 17 points. We will talk over the course of the next couple of episodes about how good this Nebraska defense is and compare it. But Nebraska has the opportunity, again, for the fan base. For the fan base, it has an opportunity to change the conversation. For the players, a chance to change the conversation. For the coaches, a chance to change the conversation. A win over Iowa Friday at Memorial Stadium changes the recruiting conversation. It changes the NIL conversation. It changes the fan perspective, the fan belief, the fan mood. The sun will rise on Saturday, but it will shine brighter after Nebraska beats Iowa. It will rise on Saturday, even if they lose to Iowa, but the conversations will change. Throughout all of this season, we've looked at certain coaches over the course of the next few episodes. We'll talk about coaches that are under the watchful eye of the fan bases in the administration, coaches that may lose their job, coaches that will step away, players that will jump in the transfer portal, and opportunities will pop up for players to set their place in these teams in the programs. Nebraska has started 3 quarterbacks this season. That's not ideal. Iowa's had to make changes too. They're starting a backup quarterback as well. And the numbers come into play, and we will talk about those numbers in full because this is an interesting, unique sort of day. The question that we will get the answer to is on Friday, which offense will be good enough for their team to find victory? It won't be easy. It won't be sexy. But one of these offenses has to find some success, just enough for them to go 1-0 on Friday. I'm DP Locked On Huskers. We'll be right back. It is a special week in rivalry week. This is the rivalry. I'll say this, rivalry week. Rico can put that up there, rivalry week. That through what each of these teams are trying to honor is a place for the teams within the program's history. And this team will be talked about. The question is, what will the program say about these teams before we get into the numbers and the 27-point over and under in these offenses? Rico, if you would, please let them know about PrizePicks.
Thanks, DP. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They are the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. With the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from a different sports or leagues. For example, LeBron James and Travis Kelce add a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. Want to play alongside some of PrizePicks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Back to you, DP.
Thank you, sir. I greatly appreciate it. Again, the numbers that we're talking about for these offenses, the number that jumps out, and the numbers mean whatever you want them to mean, right? You can say these numbers are balanced, these numbers are fair, these numbers are unfair, whatever you want to say about it. Vegas has a pretty good concept and bead on what these teams have shown. And the opinions that you have don't really matter as much as the facts. And the facts are that Vegas and its wizards have gotten together and have looked in the crystal ball and have deemed Iowa a 1.5-point favorite, which is interesting. Listen, a 9-2 team playing for their share of the Division's Conference Championship versus a 5-6 team that's trying to find its identity and then put a stamp on a season to at least make it a positive one, a productive one, to get to 500. So a team playing for 10-2 versus a team that's playing for 6-6. And the odds makers have said, well, listen, we only think there's a point between you two. We've got to put it at 1.5 just for comfort's sake, just so that people have to stand on whatever side of the bridge, whatever side of the Nebraska border you stand on. I'm not sure where the majority of people will be, whether they're betting on Iowa to win by more than 1.5, or for Nebraska to be closer than that and actually maybe win the game. You feel free to put your comments down there. But the other part of it was that the 1.5-point spread, even if you said playing at Memorial was an advantage, a field goal advantage, which is kind of the template for how this works, that would say that Iowa, if this game were there, would be a 4.5-point favorite, which still isn't a lot. Not for a 9-2 team, a team playing for a berth in the conference championship versus a team that with a loss is below 500 for the season. I mean, things are in play. But Vegas also said a thing that 27.5 points is the over-under. 27.5 is the point under, and is the over-under. And quick math says if there's a 1-point favorite, let's just say it's 1 point, that the 1.5-point favorite is Iowa, that Iowa getting their share of the 27 points is a 14-13 win over Nebraska. A 14-13 win over Nebraska is what, in their minds, that's what they expect. So I ask you, is 27 points enough? Is 27 points too high? Is 27 points too low? You can put your comments down there. Couple of things, right? That if you're going to look at the numbers, the actual numbers, that Iowa with Cade McNamara as their quarterback, they scored. He threw for 500 yards, 4 touchdowns. Quarterback yards per game, 100 yards passing per game. Not ideal, not sexy. What they've scored in their games, they've scored 24 points against Utah State, 20 at Iowa State, 41 against Western Michigan at home. They were shut out against Penn State. But wow, they beat Purdue 20-14. They went to Madison and won 15-6. So they scored 15 points against Wisconsin's defense. They only scored 10 points against Minnesota, but that's exactly what Nebraska did. They shut out Rutgers, scored 22 points. They scored 15 points against Illinois at home. The 14 points that they're talking about is kind of the range. But here's the thing. If you go down into the numbers, offensively, that Iowa averages 18 points a game, 18.5 points a game. They average 18.5, which is 13th in the Big Ten Conference, 121st in the country. That's way too many numbers in your national number. 3 numbers is bad. Nebraska, in turn, is 12th in the Big Ten Conference, 118th in the country at 18.7 points a game. Now, this is where some of the those non-con games play into it, but that's a thing. We understand. But yardage, Nebraska is averaging 317 yards a game to Iowa's 245. That gap is a thing that we're going to circle, right? The gap in yardage, because I've been saying all season long that the scoreboard tracks points. Your ability to score in the red zone, your ability to capitalize on turnovers, your ability to create turnovers for you to capitalize on. And then the advantage that you get on the special teams, whether you can flip the field, whether you can get plus yardage, all of those are things that never play. Passing offense, neither one of these teams. These two teams are the bottom of the Big Ten in passing offense. Iowa is last in the Big Ten at 126 yards a game. Nebraska is 13th in the Big Ten. They are 126 and 127 in the country in throwing the football. Now, there's some difference because with Chubba Purdy, there's some folks who believe that number should go up. That number should go up. But at 126 and 127th in the country, even with good weather, and the weather is supposed to be a little bit colder than it's been all season. The coldest game of the year is generally Black Friday. So this is what you expect. Now, will you be able to throw the ball around? Don't know. We make zero assumptions offensively when it comes to these two teams. Running the football Iowa has averaged 119 yards a game running the football. That is 105th in the country. That is 105. And if you want to get excited as a Husker fan about a stat that stands in play offensively, then Nebraska is first in the rushing offense at 186 yards a game. That is first in the Big Ten Conference, 26th in the country. It is the only outlier when it comes to numbers offensively for either of these two teams. And they wait. Now, then the question becomes, can Nebraska, in a foundational game, run the football against Iowa? We'll talk about that over the course of the weeks as well, right? Because those are things that are in play, and the numbers mean whatever we need and want for them to mean. But that number one rushing offense in the Big Ten Conference gives us something to circle, something to ponder, and something to look forward to. We'll throw it a break. When we come back, we'll close out Locked On Huskers. We'll talk about the keys to scoring points, and those points per game and the actual numbers that are in play have value. We'll be right back. Hey, gang, DP, Locked On Huskers again. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me over the course of this episode just to get some information that, as they say, this is one of those games where the offensive numbers may be offensive. And if you're a Husker fan and you're looking and trying to find a way for Nebraska to have success, it's going to require that they do some things and accomplish some of the things. One, do the things that you do well better than your opponent. And then two, limit them into doing those things. And the big key is this. It is points per game. That, again, I was averaging fewer yards per game offensively than Nebraska. They average almost 60-plus yards less in the rushing offense, which generally is moving drives from 20 to 20. And your ability or inability to score points in the red zone certainly matter. But here's the thing. Iowa in the red zone, when it comes to red zone offense, is 8th in the Big Ten Conference, 54 in the country. That in the red zone, the numbers are pretty good. Nebraska is last in the Big Ten Conference in red zone offense. Last, 125th in the country. And a part of the frustration of what Nebraska fans have gone through is their inability to finish drives, an inability to finish games. And the first one affects the second one. Your inability to finish drives in games always, especially when it comes to Nebraska, ends up on the scoreboard late in games and forces you to try to get extra points at the end of the game that you could have set up on the board throughout the game. The total yardage is nice. Being plus yardage in total yards, it's a good thing. You're plus 60 yards, 70 yards in total offense, that's fine. You're plus 65 yards in the run game, that's fine. But Iowa still manages to score 18.5 points a game, which is just behind Nebraska at 18.7. 27-point spread for the over-under. Again, the 14-13 score. 14-13 says Iowa gets 2 touchdowns in all of their 8, 9, 10, 11 drives. How many of they get the course of the day? Nebraska will score 3 times, but 2 of them will be field goals rather than touchdowns. So what do we circle and what do we pay attention to? Nebraska's ability to get points in the red zone. They have to finish drives by scoring touchdowns. I think we're comfortable that 2 touchdowns and additional scores. If Nebraska scores 3 touchdowns Friday, they win the game. I can say that openly, publicly. If they score 3 touchdowns, they should win if they score 2. They should win if they score 2. But if they score 2 and then have to rely on a field goal, you're opening the gate. You're opening the door for Iowa and this team to figure out a way to beat Nebraska. And what Nebraska fans will tell you, the most difficult thing in all the sports for them to do is finish games. 1-score games it's just been a prickly rose when it comes to Nebraska, and that same thing will be in play. If Nebraska can punch these drives and finish them with touchdowns, they have a wonderful opportunity to win football games and, hey, get win number 6 against Iowa on Black Friday. Touchdowns, not field goals. That's the mission. I'm DP. Thanks for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every day. I want to close with the 3 words we love so much. Go Big Red.